The Bad Batch has come to an end. I've been collecting Easter eggs from all of Season 3, and I found 80 Star Wars references and connections, so here they all are. In the season premiere, Confined, the Arabesh on the screens of each clone's blood test reads Stamina, Agility, and Strength. I wonder if they've also got Intelligence, Wisdom, and Constitution written down somewhere. We learned that the cloning experiments have to do with M-count, a term we first heard from Dr. Pershing in the Mandalorian episode The Siege. Of course, that stands for Metachlorian count. In Episode 2, Paths Unknown, the character Issa Durand appears for the first time after being mentioned back in the Season 1 episode Infested. She is played by Angelica Houston, but this isn't her first time in Star Wars. She also voiced the Sith Lady in the excellent Star Wars Visions short Screecher's Reach. In the past, Devaronian women were described as not having the distinctive horns Devaronian men have, so this episode might change that, or maybe Issa is a new kind of Devaronian, or maybe the horns are part of a crown or headpiece or something. After landing on the planet Cetron, Wrecker says it smells like rancid Jotaz. Those large creatures can be found on the planet Zepho in the video game Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. On Cetron, Hunter and Wrecker meet 3 younger clones who say they were abandoned there after being evacuated from Kamino. We saw a group of clones leaving Kamino back at the end of Season 1 of the series. One of the young clones says the Empire ordered a base Delta Zero on the laboratory to destroy the slithervines they created. That was a term first coined in Star Wars Legends as an especially extreme form of orbital bombardment meant to completely destroy the planetary surface of its target. The 2 younger clones are voiced by Julian Dennison, a New Zealand actor who appeared in Deadpool 2 and The Hunt for the Wilder People. The older clone, Mox, is voiced by Daniel Logan, who played Boba Fett in Attack of the Clones and voiced the character in the Clone Wars. The Arabesh on this console reads Exporting Data. In Episode 3, Shadow of Tantus, we get a good look at Nala Se's datapad, which shows a graph very similar to the one Obi-Wan looks at that displays Anakin's metachlorian count in The Phantom Menace. Hemlock tells the Emperor that their facilities have expanded so they can test much larger assets. We find out exactly what he's talking about later in the season. But the Emperor is more interested in hearing about Project Necromancer, a term we first heard discussed by the Imperial Shadow Council in The Mandalorian Season 3. The massive creature Omega and Crosshair encounter outside of Mount Tantus on the planet Wayland is called a Dryax and is described as a massive bear-slash-panther-like creature. In Episode 4, A Different Approach, Omega and Crosshair attempt to book passage on a Star Commuter 2000 shuttle. The card game Omega plays with the Trandoshan and the Imperial Captain Man is new to the Star Wars universe. It's called Balans. The Arabesh on the animal crates reads Caution, Volatile Contents. The Arabesh on the screen that appears when Omega unlocks all the crates predictably translates to Unlocking All Cargo. A handful of familiar creatures escape those crates, including the Void Strider seen on Abafar in the Clone Wars episode A Sunny Day in the Void. Some Nunas from Naboo can be seen, and a Porg cry can also be heard. A large tentacled creature eats Captain Man. Many fans have guessed it could be a Rathtar, an idea I like, but it's impossible to say for sure. A TK trooper lets out a scream as he is blasted off a platform by ship engines. Sound designer David W. Collins has confirmed that is the new signature scream they've been using lately in place of the classic Wilhelm scream. The family reunion at the end of the episode takes place on one of the moons of Ryloth, which was first seen in Season 1 where Omega met Hera Syndulla. In Episode 5, The Return, Crosshair takes Clone Force 99 back to Barton 4, the snowy planet first seen in the Season 2 episode, The Outpost. There, he revisits the site of some serious trauma and pays respect to the clones that died there, including Mayday, who he worked so hard to save. The Ice Vulture from that episode makes several more appearances, and a new creature simply called an Ice Worm attacks the Bad Batch. It's possible Crosshair and Mayday walked through the tunnels originally carved by worms back in Season 2. During their travels, they hear a noise that Mayday claims is just the ice settling, but it could have been a worm. The official StarWars.com guide states that the worms are more active in the warmer seasons of Barton 4, and the planet does look less harsh this time around. It was funny timing that The Return aired just days after the theatrical release of Dune Part 2, which of course features sandworms, and it's a well-known fact that Dune provided heavy inspiration to George Lucas and his initial development of Star Wars. Wrecker traveling to another part of the outpost to prime a breaker and reset the power to the base is very similar to the events of the first Jurassic Park movie. In Episode 6, Infiltration, the first scene takes place on Pantora, a world we haven't seen since early on in the Bad Batch in the Season 1 episode Cornered. Former Raxus Senator Avi Singh and his droid GS-8 are on the planet for their second appearance in the series. They meet with Senator Chuchi of Pantora, who seems to have a growing role in the coming resistance against the Empire. Although they were briefly seen earlier in Season 3 of The Bad Batch, we get to see clone CX operatives in action again for their most significant appearance since the middle of Season 2. Hauser also makes his triumphant return as the recurring hot clone character with great hair, having first been introduced in the Season 1 episode Devil's Deal. We meet a new clone character named Greer, who isn't an Easter egg, but I think it's funny he's the 4th character that has that name. Greer Sonnel was a member of the Resistance, Greer was the name of a prison guard in Legends, and a Padawan named Greer was in a kid's book called Jedi Academy. Rex and his clones make their base in the Bomar Monastery on the planet Teth. It first appeared in the Clone Wars movie, a location I would say began the story of clone troopers as we know them today, at least as well-loved individual characters. The clones eat food that is said to be Gregor's recipe. He would be a decent cook since he worked as one on the planet Abathar while he had amnesia. A bunch of bombs rolling onto the floor to all explode together reminded me of a similar situation seen in the Andor Season 1 finale. The episode ends with the return of Clone Commander Wolf, who we haven't seen chronologically since the Clone Wars Season 6, but we know he will eventually join Rex and Gregor on the planet Selos in Star Wars Rebels. In Episode 7, Extraction, you can hear a Wilhelm scream as a trooper falls out of an attack shuttle, so the old sound effect isn't completely retired. Wolf tells Rex he thought his friend died on a cruiser. That was his cover story, that he perished along with the rest of the clones that fought against Ahsoka Tano and Maul after the execution of Order 66 in the Clone Wars series finale. In Episode 8, Bad Territory, a couple of droids serve as bouncers to the cantina where Hunter and Wrecker meet up with Fennec Shand. They're the same model of droids we saw in Season 2 that made up the Vanguard Axis droid cartel. Speaking of droids, there are a ton of pit droids in this episode. They were of course first created for the Phantom Menace, but this little guy has a hat and he works as a bartender now. This episode also sees the return of Fennec Shand. I'd hardly call her an Easter egg, but obviously she was originally in The Mandalorian and The Bad Batch Season 1. She is still played by Ming-Na Wen. She is hunting Sylar Saris, who is a praying mantis-like species inspired by the Yamri, also known as the Huck, who were first seen in A New Hope in the Cantina, although StarWars.com suggests Sylar is a new subspecies. His nickname is the Slayer of Ordo Eris, and he supposedly killed some top members of the Haxian Brood. The Brood was a criminal syndicate first created for Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. Their primary base, Ordo Eris, also appeared in that game, built into an asteroid in Polis Massa. Omega teaches Crosshair how to meditate, which she learned how to do from Gungi in the Season 2 episode Tribe, which she tells Crosshair about. In Episode 9, The Harbinger, Asajj Ventress returns. The data the batch has on her doesn't translate to much, simply reading Asajj Ventress, last known location, list of offenses, record ID, and additional notes. Asajj has a black snake emblem on her armor, which she has had since her time as a bounty hunter in the Clone Wars, but it's also likely a reference to a specific black snake-like creature from Dathomir that we see in the novel Dark Disciple. Of course, she died in that book, having been struck fatally by Count Dooku's lightning. Some close-ups seem to show marks on her skin that were mentioned in the novel, so they could be scars from the event. Her line, "I've got a few lives left," is the only hint that we get about the fact that she seems to have been resurrected, but Lucasfilm has assured viewers that we will learn the full story in the future. Episode 10, Identity Crisis, is the only episode that doesn't have an appearance from any current or former member of Clone Force 99. The baby Baron and his mother are Tarlafars, a species that first appeared in Solo: A Star Wars Story. Baron has a Tarlafar plush that never leaves his side, but throughout his house you can see a Gran and a Tals as well. The child is kidnapped by Cad Bane, who has a history of capturing Force-sensitive babies, as first seen in the Clone Wars. Someone in our after-show live chat referred to this act as cadnapping, and that's perfect. The other kidnapped children are Iktachi, Mary Allen, and Pantoran. Imri claims she was going to be discarded by the Kaminoans when she confronts Nala Se. In the Clone Wars, we saw that they were willing to, quote, discard an entire batch of clones that they felt weren't reaching their potential in combat. Hemlock analyzes some new trooper designs on his datapad. Their eyes resemble those of the Dark Trooper droids seen in The Mandalorian. Imri visits a base in orbit above Coruscant. It's inspired by Ralph McQuarrie concept art that was originally meant to be an incomplete Death Star that also would have been in orbit above the Imperial capital, which was called Had Abaddon at the time. In Episode 11, Point of No Return, Phee reminds her droid, Mel, that she repaired her after Andro Prime and Skara Nal. We don't know what happened on Andro Prime, but we saw Mel get destroyed on Skara Nal in Season 2 of the series. The droid working at the fueling station, named Ollie, is voiced by Matt Lanter, who played Anakin Skywalker throughout the entirety of the Clone Wars. Phee has a droid vacuum tube to get Mel on and off her ship. Jawas used the same devices to load droids on and off their sandcrawlers in A New Hope. In Episode 12, Juggernaut, Clone Force 99 travels to an Imperial prison planet called Erebus. That world is named for the Greek god of darkness, whose name was also used for part of the pathway to Hades, so this name is fitting as part of the pathway to Tantus, which was like hell for Crosshair. We see Rampart again, the primary Imperial villain from the first season and a half of the series. He is working alongside an Ugnaught, which reminded me of Kuiil from The Mandalorian, who claimed that he was also forced to serve the Empire. Clone turbo tanks are used as prison transport on Erebus. That was a concept first seen on the Imperial labor world of Wobani in Rogue One. In Episode 13, Into the Breach, Omega's initial plans for escape immediately reminded me of the Narkina 5 episodes from Andor. The control room on the Imperial space station matches the same design as the control room for Hangar 327 on the Death Star as seen in A New Hope. In Episode 14, Flash Strike, Stephen Stanton voices RA-781, which is a similar droid to AP-5 from Star Wars Rebels, who was also voiced by Stanton. I kinda think there's a dash of Tarkin in the new droid's voice as well, who is also voiced by Stanton in the Clone Wars, Rebels, and the Bad Batch. It's certainly not an Easter egg, but it is so good to see the Zillo Beast once again after the Season 2 episode Metamorphosis. Hemlock hinted at the creature's presence in Tantus when he mentioned larger experiments to Palpatine back in the season's 3rd episode. Echo confronting Emery about her part in the experimentation of fellow clones is perfect, considering he himself went through horrific experimentation under the hands of the Techno Union during the Clone Wars. In the series finale, the cavalry has arrived. Omega and her squad of kids disable and reprogram their nanny droid to help them take down Dr. Scalder. This is similar to a plan Clone Force 99 executed in the series premiere, where they reprogrammed a sentry droid with live ammunition to fight alongside them during a high-stakes training session. When Omega wakes up the Zillo Beast, we see its eyes snap open and its pupil dilate. That reminds me of the iconic shot in Jurassic Park, a movie that has been referenced multiple times this season. The music that plays during the activation of the new CX Troopers is reminiscent of the score from The Mandalorian during the activation of the Dark Troopers. In Star Wars Legends, the original Phase Zero Dark Troopers were cybernetically enhanced clones, so I think the CX Troopers could be a new twist on that idea. One of them even wields blades, like the Phase 1 Dark Trooper from the video game Dark Forces. Hemlock's attempts to recondition Hunter, Wrecker, and Crosshair look similar to what Crosshair went through in the series premiere, when Tarkin had the strength of his inhibitor chip enhanced. Nala Se's datapad reads "Transfer in progress" while she steals back all her data on Project Necromancer. The room with the shifting floors where the CX Troopers are held is similar to the training rooms on Kamino, where Echo and the other clones were seen receiving their combat training in the Clone Wars. Hemlock releases a neurotoxin into the room to knock out the clones. He used the same gas on Crosshair back in Season 2. The standoff with Omega and Hemlock on top of a high bridge reminded me of the Season 2 episode The Crossing, where Omega also trusted her brothers to rescue her from a long fall. Tarkin arrives to Wayland in the first Imperial-class Star Destroyer we've seen in the series, officially heralding the reign of the Empire era. Tarkin then shuts down the Tantus base and diverts all of its funding to Project Stardust, which is, of course, the Death Star. But that's everything I caught in The Bad Batch Season 3. Let me know what I missed in the comments. If you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, follow us on our socials, and consider checking out our Patreon page. As always, thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.